Hello everybody and welcome to the studio. Today's video series is going to be a new one called Evolution Exposed. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on the 6 stages of evolution. I'm super excited for this, so let's play the intro and then we'll get straight into the presentation. Alright guys, let's go ahead and get straight into the presentation. Now I decided to put this in PowerPoint format so that we can stay on topic and I don't go down any rabbit trails. Otherwise, this video could turn into an hour-long video.
I just really need you to focus right now, okay?
The first thing I want to address is the 3 fundamental questions to life that everyone will eventually ask themselves. The first one is, how did we get here? The second one is, what is our purpose in life? And the third one is, what happens when we die? From what I understand, there is only 2 ways that people have attempted to answer this question. The first is with religion. There are many different religions. They don't agree on anything for the most part, so only one of them can really be right if that is the case. The second way that people attempt to answer this question is with science. Now, I want to clarify that we cannot scientifically prove the origins of the universe, but we can use science as a set of guidelines to help us come up to a logical conclusion for this answer. So what exactly is science teaching us in regards to the origins of the universe? Well, most scientists are going to generally agree on the idea of evolution, so let's go ahead and look at what they're trying to teach us with this theory. Once upon a time, there was nothing. Then that nothing exploded, and that explosion somehow created everything in the universe. Now, when everything was created, the Earth was originally a hot, molten ball of rock. Then it rained on those rocks for millions of years, and eventually that created a new Earth with a primordial soup, as they like to call it. That primordial soup had to cook for a while, and after it was done cooking, we got the first living organism. From there, that living organism slowly transitioned into every living organism we see today.
You were serious about that?
Now that we all understand the general idea of what evolution teaches, let's take a deeper look at this. Maybe it'll sound a little bit more realistic when we get into the details. There are 6 stages to evolution. Now, of these 6 stages I just listed, the first 5 are purely speculation. They have not been observed, studied, tested, or demonstrated, so they are in fact not science. However, because microevolution is an observable science, people like to tag the other 5 into the reality of the last stage, but that's not the case. We'll get into that more when we get to the macro and microevolution part of the video. So let's start with cosmic evolution. This is the origin of time, space, and matter. Most scientists will explain this with the Big Bang. I haven't really heard any other common theories, so that's the only one we're going to focus on for this video. Now, a lot of evolutionists in debates tend to argue the fact that cosmic evolution is in fact not a part of the evolution theory, and it's not even a real term. And I would beg to differ because there are tons of books that are in fact about cosmic evolution. As you can see from the title in the slide that I'm showing, we have a book called Origins, 14 Billion Years of Cosmic Evolution. This book is written by Degrasse Tyson. I'm not sure if he's actually a scientist or if he's just some kind of whack job philosopher that people give a pedestal in the media because he's willing to promote evolution. Neither here nor there. We're going to look at a couple of pages in his book and just kind of see what he has to say about cosmic evolution. So, in his book, if we look at the contents, in the overture, he titles it The Greatest Story Ever Told. I thought this was interesting because that specific phrase has always been used to describe the Bible. So you can see that he's trying to either mock the Bible or he's trying to associate whatever feelings you have with the Bible to his book. Next, we look at chapter 1, and chapter 1 is called In the Beginning. But we're going to look at that in just a second, so hold your horses on that one. Let's look at the greatest story ever told and see how he starts his book. Some 14 billion years ago, at the beginning of time, all the space and all the matter and all the energy of the known universe fit within a pinhead. So we see that the first sentence of his book has no actual science in it. It's just a dogmatic statement that he's expecting you to believe.
Imagination.
Furthermore, I don't think you can fit anything into a dot the size of a pinhead. So this is not science. But let's continue on in his book and see what else he has to say. In chapter 1, he says, in the beginning there was physics. I'm sorry, Neil, but no. In the beginning, God. See, physics can't be the beginning because physics is a law in science. Laws don't just happen by chance, especially from an explosion. What he's trying to tell us is that an explosion created order in the universe. And from every observable explosion we see in the world, explosions don't create order, they create chaos. But let's go ahead and look further into his book. Later on in the chapter, he says, throughout history, different cultures have produced creation myths that explain our origins as the result of cosmic forces shaping our destiny. These histories have helped us to ward off feelings of insignificance. I think it's kind of interesting how he words this, because essentially what he's saying is that if you believe in God, it's because you have no self-worth and you need something to make you feel significant. What's even funnier is the word insignificance. If you look at his book title, here is the title. It's in red letters and it kind of blends into the background. And it's not that big of a font either. Then you look at the name on the title and you can see his names are in big bright letters and they cover half of the page. So is this a feeling of insignificance, Neil deGrasse Tyson?
You have the right to remain.
But that's enough for Neil deGrasse Tyson's book. As you can tell, we're not going to really see any science in this. It's all going to be dogmatic statements. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the 3 big problems that the Big Bang must address. The first problem is, where did time, space, and matter come from? The second question is, does the Big Bang violate the laws of thermodynamics? And then the third question is, does the Big Bang violate the laws of physics? Let's start with physics. So, does the Big Bang violate the laws of physics? For this, we're going to focus on conservation of angular momentum. Imagine we have a grenade and I pull the pin on this grenade. The next thing that's going to happen is kaboom, it's going to blow up, and then all of the pieces of shrapnel metal are going to go in different directions based on that explosion. Now, what the conservation of angular momentum does is it explains the patterns we should expect from this explosion. What's even more interesting is that this angular momentum in the Big Bang would have caused the sun to spin very rapidly, but actually our sun spins very slowly, while the planets that move around it are the ones that are spinning rapidly. In fact, the sun has over 99% of the mass of the solar system, yet it only produces 2% of the angular momentum. This pattern is directly opposite to the patterns predicted from the Big Bang. This quote is coming from a publication that is written by secular scientists, so this is not a creationist source. Let's look at another quote. This one is by Dr. Stuart Ross Taylor at Cambridge University. He said, "The ultimate origin of the solar system's angular momentum remains obscure." This is a fancy way of saying we have no idea how to explain this and teach the Big Bang. But we're going to teach the Big Bang anyway. Another thing I wanted to point out is that Venus and Uranus actually rotate backwards from 6 of the other planets in our solar system. Here is a quote from another secular scientist, and he says that we have some theories about how the spin of Venus may have been pulled into the sink of the Earth. Unfortunately, they don't really work. So he's saying they have no explanation for this. On top of this, We know that 8 out of 91 moons in our solar system rotate backwards. When you look at Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune, they actually have moons that orbit in both directions. And no one knows how to explain this. If you were to ask an evolutionist, why do these planets and moons orbit backwards? They're not going to answer you. They're going to say they're not sure. Science doesn't have an answer, so they don't want to give a false answer. Well, I have a theory for that. I believe that in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and he made those planets and moons rotate backwards just to make evolution look stupid.
Pow.
Next question we're going to look at is, does the Big Bang violate the first law of thermodynamics? Now, for those of you that don't know, the first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. So if we look at this textbook, we can see that they say nothing really means nothing. From this state of nothingness, the universe began in a gigantic explosion about 16.5 billion years. Again, they're not showing any scientific evidence, they're just dogmatically stating it and expecting you to believe it. The problem is that nothing cannot create something according to the scientific laws of thermodynamics. So then how does nothing exploding and creating all of the energy in the universe not violating the first law of thermodynamics? Keep in mind that scientific laws cannot be bent or changed. You have to fit your theory within these laws, otherwise they don't work. They're not science, they get thrown in the trash. The next question we're going to look at is, where did time, space, and matter come from? The Big Bang doesn't explain where time, space, and matter comes from. Time, space, and matter is what we call a continuum. All of them have to come into existence in the same instance, otherwise it doesn't work. Because if you were to have matter but no space, where would you put it? If you were to have matter and space but no time, when would you put it? Time, space, and matter must come into existence in the same instance simultaneously. The Bible actually answers this problem in the first sentence of the book. In the beginning, that's time, God created the heaven, that's space, and the earth, that's matter. Also, inside of each of these, there is another continuum. Time has past, present, future. Space has length, width, height. And matter has solid, liquid, gas. This is a trinity of trinities created simultaneously by the Holy Trinity. The God who created time, space, and matter is not inside of them. He is outside of this system. So he can create these without a problem. But the Big Bang is actually within time, space, and matter. So there's no way that it could possibly create them. Easier way to explain this is, if you have a computer, you don't expect the person that created the computer to be inside of it, running around and flipping switches every time you push a button. Otherwise, there'd only be one computer in the entire world. But the Big Bang is within time, space, and matter. So by that statement, there is no way that the Big Bang could create time, space, and matter. Therefore, the Big Bang doesn't explain the beginning. Next, we're going to look at chemical and stellar evolution. And the reason I put them together in one category is because if you try and study these separately, it's impossible. They are basically intertwined at the very roots of the theory. So let's go ahead and look into these a little bit further and see what the details tell us. Here is an article from sciencelearn.org. It's titled Elements and the Big Bang Theory. During the formation of the universe some 14 billion years ago, in the so-called Big Bang, only the lightest elements were formed. According to this article, during the Big Bang, 4 main elements were created: hydrogen, helium, lithium, and beryllium. Let me go ahead and circle those for you in case you don't know where they're at on the periodic table. This statement is pure speculation. This is not proven. But if we were to overlook that, the next step in this process is that we need to evolve the rest of the elements in the periodic table. This is chemical evolution. Evolution says the rest of the elements were formed by stars. This is what we call stellar evolution. And again, this is also not proven. But even if we are to overlook the fact that none of this is proven, we still come across a lot of problems. Essentially, chemical and stellar evolution must happen simultaneously. However, according to these charts, you need iron to form a star. This element was not created during the Big Bang. So where does iron come from? You can't have stars without the chemical ingredients existing first. This is a classic chicken and the egg problem. Which came first? The stars or the chemicals? After we somehow overcome this first iron problem, we come across a whole new iron problem. According to these charts that I'm about to show you, this is the process of a star's growth and what elements it would create. I'm going to go ahead and blow this slide up so you can look a little bit closer and get the details if you want. So, we get iron, silicon, sulfur, oxygen, magnesium, neon, carbon, helium, and hydrogen from a star, but you have to have iron to start the star. This is only 9 of the elements on the periodic table. And none of these elements are higher than iron, as you can see from the circles. So, the reason I bring that up is because basic observations show us we cannot fuse past iron very well. So how do we get all of these elements? This is what chemical and stellar evolution would need to be successful at to take us to the next stage. Evolution brings no answers for these issues. It only creates more problems. I think it's safe to say that the idea of evolution falls apart in the first 3 stages, but we're going to keep looking and see if maybe there's a piece of the puzzle we're missing. Next, we're going to look at organic evolution, also known as abiogenesis. What's funny about this is that if you watch debates on creation versus evolution, as soon as you mention abiogenesis, the evolutionists will start crying hysterically and claiming that abiogenesis is not a part of evolution. It's completely different. It's a different field of study. And I don't care what you want to say about it. Organic evolution, or abiogenesis, is the most crucial step. It's the biggest question we have in the theory. This is the idea that life formed from non-living material. This has never been observed, tested, or replicated. In fact, as of today, all experiments have failed miserably, and no one in the science community can even agree on a possible idea to how this is possible. Next, we look at macroevolution. Macroevolution is supposed to be the process of changing from one kind of animal to another, but again, this has never been observed. In fact, all observations show us that this will never happen no matter how much time is involved. There are too many changes that would be required to take place simultaneously to turn one kind of animal into another and still allow it to continue its species. The obvious argument to prove this point would be to compare the reproductive systems of different animals. When you see how different and complex these systems can be, you realize that if even one step in this process was off, the entire systems would fail, and that would be the end of that animal's species. This has become such a problem that evolutionists have come up with the insane rescue device that they call the law of monophyly. There are several major issues with this idea. The first one is that none of this has been observed. There is no evidence to back this up. It is pure speculation. The second is that this quote-unquote law claims that in the future animals will never create a new kind of animal, but in the past they did. The final issue I see with this is that when you start questioning evolutionists on this process in debates, when they get tired of trying to explain the impossible, they just invoke the law of monophyly as if that automatically solves the problem and you're going to leave them alone on the topic. No, it doesn't answer anything. It's obvious this is not a scientific law, first off. And then beyond that, it's very obvious that this is nothing more than a rescue device that was created solely for the purpose of digging evolutionists out of a hole when they can no longer trick you into believing their dogma.
Well, it's funny you should... George, they're onto us!
Let's get out of here.
This is extremely deceptive and disingenuous, not to mention I find it deeply insulting to the scientific process. Next, let's look at microevolution. Now we're actually starting to talk about observable science. Microevolution is variations within the same kind. This is actually observable and can be tested, but it always has limitations based on the information available in the original gene pool of that organism. There is never new genetic information added. In fact, most variations we see are the removal of genetic information, or they're the activation of previously dormant DNA. Every variation we observe was already in the gene code prior to the new variety, so this will never lead us to the macroevolutionary stage.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Microevolution really is a poor name for this process, as it doesn't enforce the idea of evolution in any way, shape, or form. But they intentionally named it microevolution because it allows the other 5 stages to have a crutch to lean on. The best way to explain this is that you see this one observable variation happening, and because it is labeled evolution, you automatically accept the other 5 concepts even though they are completely unscientific. This is called the free rider effect, and it again shows just how deceptive and disingenuous the evolution community is. They're not trying to find the truth or the knowledge of the universe, they're just trying to push their religion on you. When you think logically for yourself and weigh all the facts, you start to see the reality of the science. This leaves you with no other option but to conclude that evolution is completely unscientific, and in fact, it really is more of a government-funded, godless religion. So how do we answer those 3 fundamental questions to life that we mentioned at the beginning of the video? In case you need a refresher, the 3 fundamental questions to life are: how did we get here? What is our purpose in life? And what happens when we die? Since science will never be able to observe, study, test, and demonstrate the creation of the universe, we are only left to rely on religion to answer this question. What's interesting is that when you start researching religion, you'll find that only the Judeo-Christian religion provides an absolute beginning when describing the origins of the universe. Genesis 1:1 starts by saying, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." All the other religions appear to start their beginning after the heaven and the earth was already present. Or some religions don't even mention the origins at all. But why is this? Well, I have a theory that provides one possible answer to this question. Part of the Christian belief is that since there is only one God, that means all of the other religions are written, influenced, or inspired directly by Satan as a means of deception from the one true God. But how is this related to the origins of the universe, and does that explain which religion is right? Well, it's related to the topic because in the Bible, God tells us that Satan is not eternal. He was originally an angel named Lucifer, and since the angels rejoiced on day 3, he had to have been created on either day 1 or day 2 after the heaven and the earth were already created. So if Satan was created after the heaven and the earth, like the Bible says, it would make sense that all of his false religions would also start after the heaven and the earth were created, because that's all he knows. He doesn't have a full understanding of the beginning. This alone is a pretty strong case for the Bible, but this is not the only evidence. However, for today's video, we're not going to get into all of that evidence. I just wanted to kind of conclude with planting that seed so you can do some research on your own, and this will allow you to think on the topic while you're waiting for my next video that will cover this topic in much greater detail. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and please share this with anyone that is still being deceived by the evolution propaganda. Don't forget to like this video, comment with your thoughts to start a conversation, and subscribe for more content. I look forward to bringing you more episodes of Evolution Exposed, but as for this studio session, that's a wrap. Thank you and God bless.